Thank you so much.
Yay. Awesome. Well, good morning, you guys. I hope that you are staying warm and cozy. And so today we're going to talk about pricing a property. And so I just want to make sure y'all see in the screen that says pricing properties. Can y'all see that okay? Perfect. I'm going to go through some slides first, and then I will jump into showing you a little bit more of the we're gonna go a little bit live and actually price the property. Now, if someone has a property that they really would like to for us to kind of look at and price, my what I would love to do is talk through kind of a simpler one, and then we can talk through the harder ones, right? Because I know we're going to have a little bit of both. And so if you do happen to have one and you want me to actually use one, maybe you have a listing appointment coming up, I'm happy to kind of do it live and we'll figure it out together live. And so you can drop that in the chat box, and otherwise I'll just pick a property. So anyways, I would like to tell you about our goals for this class. I'm sorry, my husband's in the other room and he's watching, and can y'all hear the reverb? Okay, he's leaving. Okay, so today we're going to learn key factors in pricing a home and pricing strategies, which I apologize, I spelled that wrong. Understand how to search and pull comparable properties in MLS. Learn how to utilize visual pricing tools. So we're going to talk about using Cloud CMA. There are other tools available, such as RPR. I'm not going to show you how to do that today, but there are many great classes on learning that as well. And then learning how to communicate with your clients to help them determine the price. We're going to talk about it a little bit. We talk about it also in the Winning the Listing class, and I don't know if we'll have a lot of time to get into that today, but we'll mention it. I'll mention that as we go through. Okay, so first of all, just talking about comparable sales for guidance. I know many of us have heard the term CMA. Even a lot of our clients have actually heard us using it because realtors just use that terminology. I think it's important for us not to assume our clients know what it means, though. And we don't want to do a CMA just the way everybody else does it. We want to be the experts on the market, but basically a comparative market analysis puts your home side by side against other recently sold properties that are similar in location, condition, and size. And so these are 5 of the main factors of pricing: location, price, size, special features, and then conditions like year built, or it can be what is the condition of the house, right? And by the way, I'll just send you guys a copy of the PDF of these slides, so don't feel like you need to take screenshots or take, if you want to take meticulous notes, go for it. But if you really want these slides, I'll just send a PDF. I'll drop it in the chat box in just a minute. As far as looking at in comps, and again, we're going to do this live. Most of you kind of know how to do some of these basic things, but current listings, which we can use the terminology with our clients of that's our competition, right? Then we want to look at also supply and demand. So we want to look at solds as similar to the subject property as possible. And then also we prefer to only go back 6 months. Obviously, in this market, it's literally changing month by month. So the less we go back, the more apples to apples we're looking at, and the more the better comps we're going to have, because you have to look at that when we're looking at comps, we're looking at historical data, right, for the solds. So we want to not go back as far as possible. We want to keep it recent. However, sometimes you have to go back further because you're not in a little neighborhood, easy to comp. Maybe your property has some really special things that isn't going to be easily comparable. So sometimes you have to go out of that 6-month range, but that's our preference, is to stay within that. That's where appraisers start. So this is our starting point. Also, I would encourage you to check out expired. Sometimes we forget about those. I know we don't see a ton of those right now. We will again in the future at some point, but they still are out there. And so sometimes it helps us show aspirational prices or things that didn't sell. So it's conversation points with our clients. Really try and compare apples to apples. So think about, where are your buyers looking and where's the competition of those homes? So think about, obviously starting within a neighborhood is a great way. Sometimes it's within a zip code. Sometimes it may be just the street, right? If you're in Highland Park or University Park, or certain areas like that, the street to street is very different. Are they on a golf course? Is it waterfront homes? Maybe the home has a guest house. And so we need to compare to other homes that have a guest house. Sometimes you're in a neighborhood and you have very different types of builders in there. So maybe you're trying to look for a certain builder because that's going to be more comparable in price. The other thing is effective age of the home. And what I mean by that is, so like I live in a home that was like 60s age. Well, a lot of the homes on my street have been not remodeled at all. They're like almost original, but yeah, I have come in and, me and my husband, and we've done some work on the home. So we have newer AC, we have newer windows, we have, and there's been some remodeling. Or you may have complete, guts and rebuilds. And so you need to understand, obviously, what you're comparing to. And then things to consider are just price drops, days on the market, and then also seller contribution to closing costs. Because, for example, if you have a home that was 500,000 and the sellers contributed 5,000, well, then we think of it in terms of the home only sold for 495. So, and appraisers see this as well. So I just want to mention those things to you. And I know the market that we're in, you may not see some of those things, but those are some things to be aware of. And then also just off-market properties. So a lot of times your clients know, they know what has sold around them or homes around them. And so talk to them, ask them, is there anything that you know of that's not showing up visibly? And you can look in tax records and things like that. I'm not going to talk about absorption rates, but I did want to just mention it. It's a term that you're going to hear, and it's basically talking about how many properties are absorbed. It's something that over time, the longer you're in the business, it's something that is helpful to know and is good conversation with your clients. And there's a little formula basically about how many homes have sold versus how many homes are on the market. And it's basically talking about months of inventory and just how quickly those properties are absorbed. But I just wanted to mention it here. We just don't have time to go into it today. So I wanted to show you the real estate pricing pyramid. You may have seen this before. This is actually in the Cloud CMA. This is one of the pages you can put in there. I see this, I've seen it from the very beginning when I started real estate. I do think it's a good little visual. You don't have to use this, but it may be something that you might want to have conversation around, but basically shows the relationship between your home's asking price and the percentage of buyers looking at your home. So if you look at like that middle where it says market value, and then on the right-hand side, it says 60%. So it's basically saying if you price your home around market value, you're going to get about 60% of the buyers. If you price it below the market, then let's say 10 to 15%, then you are going to get 75 to 90% of buyers looking. But if we price it above market value, 10 to 15%, our pool of buyers looking at that home drops to 30 and even 10%. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I think it's a good little visual. You don't have to spend a lot of time with your clients, but I do think it's a good little visual sometimes to help clients, especially when they're thinking about overpricing the home. If you think about the home, everything is, or the market, everything is supply and demand. So in our conversations with our clients, we're talking about supply and demand. And we're also we want to expose it to as many buyers as possible, right? So the other thing I want to mention before we dive into doing kind of live, looking at it live, is pricing on the bridge. And so as far as pricing on the bridge, there's what's called like psychological pricing, which works at like Walmart. So let's say if you have a toothpaste and it's priced at $2.99 versus $3, in our mind, psychologically, we think, oh, that's cheaper. It's a good deal. So I want to get that, right? That doesn't necessarily translate the same way in real estate. I think a lot of agents try to use that same mindset. Instead of pricing a home at $500,000, they'll price it at $499,999 $999 because psychologically they think, oh, buyers are going to think it's cheaper. I'm not saying it's a bad strategy. However, one thing to make a note on, and what we call is pricing on the bridge. And so as you're looking at pricing, if your home is kind of around a main pricing bridge, so think about, okay, where do client, how, okay, let's talk about this. What kind of search does $499, $999 show up in? It's going to show up in someone looking probably from 450 to 500. If someone's looking at 500 to 550, the property doesn't show up. So if you're trying to price a home and it's somewhere on a $25,000 increment, you may want to have the conversation with your client about pricing it on the bridge. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that? I think it's important, and a lot of times we actually miss buyers. Now, smart buyers agents are looking just below the pricing bridge. But so, that's a tip. If your clients are looking for 500 and up, you might just want to look, 495 or 490 and make sure you grab in some of those other properties that might not be showing up. Any questions about that? Now, if you're at like 485, I'm not saying you need to go to 475 or 500. I'm just saying people search in $25,000 increments generally, or 50 or 100, but it's usually even, right? Okay. And then the other thing is just stay on track of seasonality trends. I think as agents, as you're working on pricing properties and you're, out there running data, I really want to encourage you to really track what's happening with the market trends and what's happening in the seasonality. This is going to help us know how to price the home in the current market. So conventional wisdom says spring is the best market. Well, right now, that's not necessarily true. We don't even know what's happening. I think spring's going to be great in this market, but they could sell a house now just as well as they could in the spring based on what we know right now. Now, that's not true for every year, but as we're watching market trends, we're going to be able to have these conversations. So if someone's saying, well, I probably need to wait till April to sell my house because that's the spring season, we need to have language around that and be able to say, well, actually, here's what's happening in the market right now, and have some data around that. I think a lot of times we also get that around like fall or especially around Christmas. So watch the seasonality trends so that you can help your clients know when to put their home on the market. Sometimes it may be best to wait a month or two, depending on the seasonality, or sometimes it doesn't make sense to wait. So we need to be the experts and know, how to advise our clients of when to price the home. And then before we jump into live, I really wanted to mention to you about understanding your market and being the expert. And these are some numbers you can pay attention to. Maybe you're at a position right now where you don't have a lot of listings. Maybe you don't even have a lot of sellers. Maybe you're working with a lot of buyers, and that's great. That's helping you learn the market as well. I do think we're going to see some trends start to happen in our market, as the interest rates go up. And so it's like, what do we need to pay attention to and be watching? Well, as agents, I think this is, I just watched a Ninja video the other day, and they were talking about, in order to stay ahead of the curve of watching our market shift, there are numbers we need to pay attention to. And so I thought this was really good information that I wanted to share with y'all. It talked about, we should be knowing the number of active listings. So that's, again, the competition. So let's say your market area is Southlake, or it is Plano, or maybe it's a specific neighborhood. Maybe it's a specific, few streets if you're in Dallas, right? So you need to know, so you don't have to do this for every market, but your market that is your niche, you want to make sure that you know the number of active listings that are coming on every day. And I know we've talked about it. I'm pretty sure Zareen's talked about it on the Agent Basics. I know we've talked about it in other classes, but have your hot sheets set up, right? Or have a custom search set up where you're watching your area and it's just on your dashboard of Netris. So know the number of active listings, watch price reductions. I mean, believe it or not, in this market, we are seeing price reductions, right? So we need to kind of watch those and just see the trends, right? Be watching days to contract that are, on the market. I know we're used to kind of now seeing like 1 to 5 days of homes going under contract, but I think I've also seen some that are 20 to 30 days. And you obviously, we notice the price, and sometimes there's a price reduction. So again, we need to, and there may be one-offs, but as we start to see that more happening, we know the market's changing, and then we can have conversations with our clients about how to price their property moving forward. And then just knowing sales price to list price ratio. So, and I'm going to show you in Cloud CMA, one of the things that you can look at that'll help you with that list price ratio. And I'll show you in Netris as well. And then just knowing the months of inventory and knowing if we're in a buyer's market versus a seller's market. Do you guys know kind of the general rule as far as how many months of inventory is kind of an even buyer seller's market? Does anybody want to tell me? Don't be shy.
6, maybe 6.
6, yeah. So that's generally what we've heard is if there's 6 months of inventory, it's a fairly even buyers and sellers market. So obviously right now we're much lower than 6. So what kind of market are we in?
Seller.
A seller's market, right? Yeah, we're in a seller's market. And so again, I know this is kind of stuff we may know, but we need to be able to vocalize this to our clients. And I think again, the good language to be able to use is supply and demand. So we don't have to talk about actives and solds. We can talk about with our clients, we need to be able to talk about the supply of the homes are lower right now. So we may be able to be more aggressive with our price because the demand is so much higher. So I think the conversation around that we're having with our clients, it gives us the authority to be the market experts. And that's what we want to be, right? We want to be market experts. Okay. So any questions on any of that before I jump into the live portion of this?
Jennifer, in terms of seasonality, I mean, I know spring is kind of the hot time, but what would be an argument today? I mean, it seems logical that maybe because there's nothing on the market today, now might be a better time to put something on the market than wait until spring. What do you think about that?
Yes, and I absolutely, I mean, I agree. It depends on the area and the price range. So I think in general, yes, we kind of know that's probably the case right now. But I will say, as we start to look at trends changing, it's not necessarily the rule. And we may see a shift where and this is what it was before, where certain price ranges had a lot more inventory. And so there was more of a seasonality to it also. But right now, all price ranges are selling, the luxury market's selling amazing, but that will change. And I think that it's good for us to be able to know that and say that, but to have the data to show the clients of, hey, this is the backup. I think that's really important to, give ourselves that authority with our clients, especially if you have clients. Some clients will take your word for it, but others, they don't necessarily just take your word for it. They want to see the information. So I'm going to show you, as we go through and price a couple of properties here together, we'll talk through that a little bit more of like, hey, here's something you can show your clients. Did I answer your question? Maybe.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So what we're going to do is, and a couple of y'all dropped some things in the chat, and I'm not watching the chat super close, so feel free to unmute yourself, or Zareen, you can help me kind of watch it in there.
I'm watching it for you.
Perfect. So someone dropped in 7104 sharps, and I hope you're not like trying to make me look really bad because it's super hard to price or something, but we're going to try and do these together and maybe give you a leg up on pricing it. So first of all, obviously I'm logged into Netris. Okay. I am going to go into realist tax. And at first, this is just where I start. If I don't know anything about the property, I'm going to look it up and I'm going to see I'm going to look for a little bit of information. So a couple of things that I'm going to look for right now is I'm gonna say, oh, it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. It's about 2,500 square feet. So that's good to know. The lot size 6319. So it looks like it's on a standard lot, built in 1989. So right now I'm just fact gathering. And then I want to look down at the subdivision. So it's in Covington Square. Sometimes you need the neighborhood, sometimes you don't, but I just kind of want to know. We're in Plano ISD. So for now, that's about all I'm going to look at right here. And then what I'm going to do is switch over to my search, MLS search, and I'm going to go to residential quick. Okay. And then I'm just going to show, this is just where I start. And the more you do this, and I highly encourage you, even if you don't have listings, one, you should be doing these for all of your, like if your buyers are putting offers, you should be running the comps and looking at this. But again, like I said, if you have neighborhoods you're farming, or you want to be doing this pretty regularly to get yourself comfortable. So where I'm going to start is I'm just going to do active, coming soon, active contingent, kick out, active option. I'm going to look at pendings and solds. I'm going to leave expireds off right now. I would at least take a look at them and just see if there's anything in there. I don't necessarily put those in my reports, but I just want to know, unless there's something that is like, stand out that I want to look at. But then what I'm going to come over here and do is I'm going to put my address in, and it's in Plano. So, and it's 11 matches. I'm just going to go over here to the map, and I just kind of want to see where it's at. And then I'm sorry, I'm going to minimize you guys so I can see my whole screen. So, so for example, this one I already know because it's below Legacy, which is a pretty main dividing line. That's an interesting one that I probably would end up taking off. It's probably in a different neighborhood. This one is actually on Custer, or backs up to Custer. So that's probably not going to be a great comp either, but I'm just kind of looking. Okay. I'm going to go over to results. And so one thing I noticed right away is my neighborhoods are all different. So if I can, I prefer to keep this in the same neighborhood, because we're looking for like properties. Now, sometimes you have neighborhoods and the properties, they all, they cross over. So I'm going to go back here, and my neighborhood was Covington Square. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type this in here, and I'm going to put an asterisk. So I don't know if you guys know the trick of asterisks in specifically with subdivision, or there's other things it works for too, such as the property description. Like if you're ever looking for like investor property or things like that, you can actually search with, you can put the word in and then put an asterisk. So it's going to grab anything after that word. So for example, this particular property is in Covington Square, but some realtors might only put Covington, or maybe there's different additions. So now it brought up everything that said Covington Square. So that's just a little trick there. So this one has 5 sold properties in here in the last 6 months. There's actually nothing on the market. Let me just see if there's anything canceled, expired. I'm just going to take a quick peek. No, nothing. Not within the last few months. So actually, I mean, these are all pretty good. Let's see, just going to look. The only other thing is I can make my map out and just make sure the neighborhood doesn't extend. But what I'm going to do actually is go ahead and take all of these properties. So you can do a quick CMA. This is probably what a lot of agents do, and they print this off and they send it to their clients. I look at this for myself as a quick look, but this is not something generally that I'm sending to my clients, unless they're super familiar and we've been doing this a long time, and I have a really strong relationship with them, because I want to show more value than that. And so, and I want to show photos and things like that. But on this quick page, you can look at real quickly, oh, these have pools. I can look at the square footages. Obviously, this one's way off. I can look at the price per square foot, list price to sold price, sold date. Then there's also the sales price compared to the list price. So most of these are, well, 3 of them are over 100%. 2 of these sold for below 100%. And then it has the combined days on the market. And then obviously down here, it has like the list and sold price averages and the medians, things like that. So those are just some quick things you can look at on here. I'm going to go back to this page. One note, I was talking with an agent this week, and he was like, how do I see the year? I just wanted to show you this little trick. You can see I have like it looks like a little cross on my mouse because I'm in between these 2 columns. If I go too far, it doesn't show it. And I can actually, sorry, so you got to hit it just right. You just click and it'll bring up where you can insert or remove a column. So let's say you wanted the year. Let's see, what is it? Year built. Then I can put it in there and, you know, look at it comparatively wise. So you can add different columns. So I just thought I'd show you that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit all and I'm going to go to Cloud CMA. Okay. And then I am going to, I don't know, I'm just going to pick some names. Whoops. Joe and Susie, because I'm going to kind of start preparing my report, but I'm also still gathering some data. Okay. We just did the Cloud CMA class. I know some of you were on that, but it is recorded if you haven't. So that class teaches how to use this tool and get it all set up in depth. But I'm going to go ahead and select my address here. If you'll remember, I mentioned too that a lot of times you just need to check the beds, the baths, and the square footage. If I was going on a listing appointment, I could add my cover photo here, but it pulled over my MLS numbers. Okay. Listen, you can do a quick and dirty search right here. I could just like put in my address and let this program search it, but we're the experts. We want to control the comps. So I think this is like, if you were just like maybe doing it for a buyer, but even still, I think this is a little bit of the lazy way to do it personally, because we're wanting to choose which comps we're going to use. So that's why I start from MLS. That's my opinion. Don't shoot me for it. But these are the comps right here on the map. I'm really not going to do anything on this page. I'm just going to go to customize. And I've already picked my pages and all that stuff. So I'm going to go to publish report. And this is, again, my process. You can spend more time researching it in MLS. That's what I used to do. I used to spend, 20 minutes or so really diving into MLS. But what I have learned is because of this live tool, I actually really like looking at the comps on here and going to the average price per square foot. This is what we call like a scattergram. And if any of you have taken Ninja, they actually talk about Focus First as a visual pricing tool. This is basically a visual pricing tool. And this is, you pay for this with your MLS, and then we have it branded with Briggs Freeman. So you really should be using this, and you don't have to go pay for this extra visual pricing tool unless you just really wanted to. They have some other features on there, but this is one of the similar scattergrams, the graphs that's on there. So on this, what I like about this is it's such a great visual tool and basically plots your properties. This one's actually pretty simple and easy to look at because the properties are all, it looks like, pretty well alike. I did leave that 1677 square feet in there. It's not necessarily one that's like, oh, that's the best comp ever. But what it does on this graph is it actually gives you kind of like a lower square footage all the way to the higher square footage. So it gives you a nice big range to look at. But if I said, well, that one's too small, I don't really want that one, then it changes my graph and it changes my price per square foot up here. So I can, if you see it adds, it changes it. So I think it's a really nice graph. And then some of the conversation with your clients is, okay, so your property is 2,500 square feet. Let me minimize it just a little bit so you can see the whole screen. So you can see in the bottom of this graph, the square footage goes across the the horizontal axis, and then the price range goes up the vertical, right? And so based on your property, you're 2,500 square feet. So that is this is your subject property right here. And you can see there's a dotted line that runs right here. Your home is going to be priced somewhere on that line. And then what we can then, looking at the other comparable homes, you see some homes priced a little bit above the line and that's drawn, and a little bit below the line. So this line, what I explain to clients is this is basically what we would call like a fair market line or a trend line. So based on the comparable properties, what it's done is kind of averaged out where it should be based on the square footage. So again, not all of them are this pretty and clean and simple and inverted like this. So sometimes you have to really play around with it. But based on the price of this, the square footage of this house, it looks like they're probably going to be ranged anywhere from like 450, maybe up to about 490. Now in this market, then you can have the conversation of, well, I really wanted to, what if your seller says, I really wanted to price it around 500? Well, let's have that conversation. And so based on what you're seeing in the market, because the supply of homes is lower, we can be a little bit more aggressive on the pricing because there's so much demand out there. So you can see some of the language in the conversation that we're having. And if you take the winning the listing class, if you take the winning the listing class, we talk about that the price range is, we don't give them an exact price. We like to give them a price range, right? And that range is 10% is what he recommends. And so that's kind of what we base it off of. It doesn't have to be exactly 10%, but you can even see on this chart, it gives you 10, kind of that 10% range. So that I just wanted to show you this. And then another chart on here that I think is really helpful for you to really look at before you go in and talk to your clients is this time to sell. And basically what this shows is these white dots are where the property was listed, and the red dot is where it sold. So you can look at this one right here that sold for probably like 480 something. Maybe 490, but it listed there and it actually sold at 530. This is a conversation then that you can have with your client, right? And right here, this one actually listed at 477, but it looks like they sold it for slightly below. Probably it was either one of these 97 or 99. And I mean, I can click on it. Let me get off my pencil. I can click on it and see which one. So this is the one at Sharps. It was listed at 480 and it sold for 470, right? And it took 23 days on the market. So this is where you have the pricing conversations with them of how high do we want to start and be aggressive? What if it doesn't sell within the first couple of weeks? Are you okay with that? And then maybe we need to, go ahead and be aggressive with the price drop. Or do we start a little bit lower, more like this one right here that sold, let's see what it sold for. It listed at 489.9 and it actually sold for 530. So they let the market drive up the price with the buyers, right? So again, these are conversations. And so what we say is you drive the process, the seller makes the decision, okay? So that's where that price range comes in handy. And so you can talk about, on average, these homes in your neighborhood are 15 days on the market, and they've actually sold for 100.4% of the list price. And then you can see like some of these others, this particular one sold really close to the list price, about 3,000 over. This one sold right at list price, okay? This one, again, was a price drop. So, and that's probably, I mean, who knows? Well, that one's a lot smaller. So again, this is just all giving you the data. This is also fabulous information going over with your clients that are buyers. When they're trying to figure out a price on the home, you can actually use this chart right here to show, well, on average, this is the percentage they're going over in this neighborhood. So that kind of helps you gauge, when they're like, well, what should I offer? Again, we don't make the decision for them, but we can show them the data. One other thing that I want to mention as a chart on here that I think is great is this does show Zestimates. So just so you know, this Zestimate in this neighborhood, they vary up to 12.5%. Sometimes I see them a lot higher, like 20 to 40%. So that is actually around $51,000 range, whereas we're giving them a little bit more of a narrow price range. This isn't the best example because it's still fairly close to a 10% range, which actually in this neighborhood, you can drill it down more than, I wouldn't just give a 10%. I would actually give a little more narrow range. But I do think people are looking at Zestimates. So we need to look at them too and just be aware. And if it doesn't make sense for you to talk about it, you can hide this page, right? When you're going over it with your clients. So any questions on this? I know I'm kind of moving through, but I want to get to another property if we can. Do you guys have any questions on that? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of this one. And I'm going to go over to another property. So let's see. 9106 Cork. Okay. And I'm just going off the ones you guys are giving me. So. Okay, so this one is, oh, that's the wrong one.
It's Cork with, yeah, there you go.
I was like, that's not the right city. Okay, so this is a 3-bed, 3-bath. It's 2360 square feet. The lot's about 8,000, so that's probably somewhat standard around there. I say, so those are some other things you need to consider is like, sometimes we have properties on an acre lot, or I know in Highland Park, University Park, some of the streets have deeper lots, right? So you need to pay attention to it in some of the other areas. Sometimes you might sell a home and you're selling more of the land, and we're like 2-acre lots. Well, those aren't comparable to a little neighborhood, even though it's right down the street. So those are, again, just some things you want to be aware of.
Can I ask you guys a question? This is the property that I sent. Sorry, I look crazy. But I I am really curious on how to price this because it does not have a 4th bedroom, even though it sort of does. It doesn't have a closet. And so we're really trying to figure out what to do on the pricing, because when they bought it, they listed it as a 4-bedroom. And a neighbor of ours had the same sort of layout, and they listed it as a 4th bedroom, and we don't think that it had a closet either. So how do you get around that? Because I was so curious what Real Estate Tax was going to say if it had a 3 or a 4, and it says 3. And so that's going to be a huge factor on people buying this home.
Mm-hmm. It is. So that's where you can make adjustments. Now, I say making adjustments, you want to be, you want to be aware of, sorry, my dog's whining. You want to be aware of what those adjustments are. You don't want to just go in and make them on your own, right? You want to maybe talk with an appraiser, or you need to do some more research. So, but you can make an adjustment based on the bedroom. So if a bedroom, let's say, is 5,000 more or 10,000 more, then you can make the adjustment, and you can actually make that adjustment in Cloud CMA. But you can also do it in RPR. RPR does a great job of that as well. So yeah.
But
I
like
answer your
legally,
question.
I need to list it as a 3-bedroom. Is that right or no?
If it does not have a closet, then yes, you need to list it as a 3-bedroom. Sellers like to push that, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you can put an armoire on there. It won't be accounted that way with an appraiser. And so this is where, if you guys ever have opportunities to take classes with appraisers, highly recommend it, because they can be really helpful to see you know, to kind of learn what they're looking for. Because the conversation that we need to have with our clients is that, and I'm sorry, I'm just looking around as we're going. The conversation we need to have with our clients is that, you know, you don't, we're pricing the property to sell. And if a buyer is getting a loan, you're selling it twice. You're selling it once to the buyers, once to the appraisers, right? And if the appraiser doesn't find the value, then we have to either renegotiate the contract, or, I mean, I know in this market right now, buyers are waiving appraisals, but it's still conversations that we have to have with our clients up front. And the more upfront conversations and setting the expectations with our clients, it's going to help them and us all have a much better process. For example, right now, Brian has a property that's under contract and the contract price is 400. And we knew it going in when he made the offer, and the buyers are aware of it, the sellers are aware of it. But it's not going, I mean, maybe it will appraise, but it's a conversation we know. So everybody's a little bit on edge right now, and it's supposed to close in a week or two, and we're just waiting on the appraisal piece. So you have to address this stuff up front. So, but to answer your question about the bedroom, is technically it needs to have a closet, and to be counted as an actual bedroom. It'll be counted as a room, right? So they do adjustments based on rooms in the house, but the bedrooms are going to count for a lot more. Does that make sense?
Is it
Yeah,
a closet and a window? Is that correct to be a bedroom? I think.
I believe so. Yeah, I think with the fire code, it has to have a window in it.
Sarah,
Is
if
that
they
right,
bought it-
Serene?
Yeah, yes, I think so. A closet and a window. Sarah, if they bought it as a 4-bedroom, you may want to go back and look at the appraisal from when they purchased it and
Yeah.
just see what it says.
Yeah, I've already told my husband, I was like, you're building the closet. It can be the smallest closet in the whole wide world, but you're building a closet.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I mean that could be the case. If you go build a closet, then it doesn't matter how small it is, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean that could be, and that's a conversation you have with your clients. Is that worth spending some of the money up front so it can be counted as a bedroom? But you also have to perceive the value in buyers' minds. Is it big enough for them to count it as a bedroom? So you got to look at it both ways, right? And then the other thing is, if there are any other properties, for example, this one 9169 on Drumcliff, well, it has 3 bedrooms. So that one would be one that you could really take a better look at as well. That's in the same neighborhood, right? Yeah, Highlands West. So, you know, that could help you with the value as far as comparing it to the 4 bedrooms. Does that make sense? Let's see, I can't see my whole screen, so let me see.
Jennifer, you were talking about ways to take a class with appraiser. What are some examples of some of those classes if somebody wants to learn more about pricing and learning it from an appraiser's perspective? What would you suggest?
That's a great question, Catherine. There's actually a class coming up. I wish I could take it. And it is, it's pretty in depth. So I'm not saying you have to take this one, but
Sure.
There is a pricing class coming up with Metrotex. I think it's February 24th. I know because it's a day that I can't do it. And you can actually get certified. Now, I'm not saying you need to go that in depth, but whenever, for example, like, I think this past week we had a class in the office that that Moji had on the calendar that was it was probably Zoom, but it was by a Trek inspector, which is, you know, really great. So it'd be kind of one of those, like just a 1-hour CE, or it doesn't even have to be for CE, but sometimes those appraisers will do classes and they'll talk about adjustments. And I have a sheet that I got from one of those classes that an adjuster gave me that's like, if it has a pool, then it's maybe 10 to 20,000. If it has bedrooms, it's this much. But you also have to keep in mind that is general rule, and so you can't just go in and say, oh, it has a pool, so I'm going to add that one as 20,000, you know, more, and start making all these adjustments, because it also depends on the condition, and it depends on the the neighborhood and what the comps are saying. So, you know, that's why I'm saying, if like this particular one, there actually is a comp with a 3-bedroom, I would weigh that really heavily along with the ones that are 4 bedrooms, and look at it that way versus just a general number from an appraiser. So I just would watch your title companies and watch classes we have here, watch, MetroTex or whatever your association is, and just see if there's any classes. I always just look for interesting classes that I'm like, oh, I want to take that one. And so I had taken a class a couple of years ago that a title company had put on, and the appraiser was there, and I was like, I want to learn more. The other thing with that, let me go back to my PowerPoint really quick. Can you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
I want to talk to you real briefly about that, of working with appraisers. If you are the listing agent, you want to get the value up as much as possible. On the buyer side too, but really I feel like as a listing agent, it's your responsibility. So I wanted to throw this in here now that we're talking about it. It is highly recommended that you meet the appraiser at the properties if at all possible. If you have a difficult property to price, or you have a property that the comps really aren't there, you better be trying to meet that appraiser, or at least having a conversation up front. Now, sometimes appraisers, they don't like it when we do their job. Others are more receptive. There has to be mutual respect within our industries because we need each other. So make sure that you always treat them with kindness and respect. And, but I do think providing a packet of information is very important to them. And I think it's a service to our sellers. Sometimes realtors will take the lockboxes off the door so the appraisers can't get in unless they make an appointment with us. But on showing time, it actually gives you an option that the inspector has to call you and make an appointment. And so there are times when I've met the inspectors, or there are times when I've just said, hey, I have a packet of information in the home for you, but I can also just email it to you. And appraisers welcome this because they do want to do a good job. And you can't tell everything from photos. You cannot tell if, the lady down the street had 15 cats, or it was a heavy smoker's house, right? Or sometimes, they might sell it to a relative, and so they sold it for a reduced amount. They may not be able to tell all of that, but maybe you have inside information. So don't skip the low comps, because the appraisers are going to see them and they're going to use them. But if you have information on them, you want to use them. But I think one of the best things we can do and provide to appraisers is a features and amenities sheet, repairs and improvements, which you should be doing these on your listings anyways. But if your people, this is what I always tell my sellers, if you've done things on your home, then let's go ahead and list those out, and let's show. Now, I don't need I changed the faucet in 2019. I don't care about that. Focus on the big things, right? Focus on the things that are going to add value. But let's say they remodeled their kitchen a year ago and they spent $50,000 on it. Put that value. A buyer may not need to see, you might not, or you may, but the appraiser absolutely needs to see the value because they're going to weigh it heavier. So this is just helping the appraisers have that information that they may not otherwise know, and they may actually give it more value. So I just wanted to throw that in there as we're talking about pricing these properties. I think it's very important.
So Jennifer, you would share the features and amenities and some costs with the appraiser, like if they put in a pool or new kitchen.
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I think it's okay also to share your comps. So if you have a package of information that show the comps you use. This is how we arrived at our price. It doesn't mean they're going to use them, but it's okay to provide that information. And it's just like, hey, we're sharing information. So I do think it's very important to, to be aware of communicating with the appraisal, because we're trying to get that value up. Any questions on any of that or anything that we talked about?
Hey, Jennifer, it's Angela. What about schools? You want to address that? Because I know that's a lot of time what the buyers are looking for. I want to be in such and such elementary school, but sometimes appraisers don't look at that. So it's like, how do you balance that with pricing?
Appraisers do not look at that. I will tell you that for sure. So if you're in Mockingbird Elementary versus one of the other elementaries, that's a big deal for buyers, and it is a much, a more perceived value, and the owners know that. So that is a very difficult thing. So I I would absolutely, in my appraiser package, meet the appraiser there in person if at all possible. We don't want to prevent them from getting out to the house, so we have to be careful with that. But at least providing that packet of information, I would have, highlighted, these are in Mockingbird Elementary or whatever the elementary is, right? It absolutely makes a huge deal, especially in East Dallas, because not all schools are equal out there. And so now it's not to say an appraiser won't use one, but I have fought appraisers of like, hey, that's not a good comp because it's across Abrams, right? It's like on the other side of Abrams, and so it's in a different school district. But if you can provide that information up front, I think that's the best way. I don't know, Angela, have you fought it other ways or shared information other ways?
No, I think just trying to, and like you said, finding that balance where you're not quote telling the appraiser to do how to do his job. So yeah.
Yeah. Jasmine asked, do we need appraisal packets when the appraisals are waived? Not necessarily. You don't necessarily need to do that. I don't think it hurts, but obviously at that point, it's not as big of a factor. I think the thing there is just helping the buyers. The higher the value is, the higher the higher the appraisal value is, then the buyers feel like, oh, I made a good decision. But if they paid 100,000 over, value, they may start to question it. So I think if the property is straightforward to price, I probably wouldn't worry about it. But if it was a really difficult one to comp, maybe it has, a guest house where the others don't, and maybe I know some comps that have guest houses, but they're maybe not the most obvious ones right around, the area, then I would probably show that. But you don't have to. I mean, that's obviously not an out of the contract, but I do think it gives the buyers more confidence they made the decision if that value is higher. So that's a great question.
I also think it's important to remember, depending on who you represent, like if you represent the buyer, I wouldn't assume that the listing agent is going to put that together. So you need to talk to the listing agent if you're representing the buyer and say, are you going to do this? Because they may not. And it behooves you to do it if they're not going to. And I mean, it behooves them to have it done also because they want the property to appraise. So if they're just not going to do it because it's not something that they understand they're even supposed to do, which I think a lot of agents don't, you guys need to ask to fight for your buyers.
Yes. And the other thing I want to note with you guys is price per square foot. I know a lot of agents talk price per square foot. Well, this is 180, this is 190. Price per square foot is a general rule, but it is not the end all be all of how we should be pricing a home. There's a lot of factors and variables that go into that. So you can't just say, oh, well, the average in the neighborhood or, on the street is 200 per square foot. So we just need to take your square footage and multiply it by 200. I think that's a quick calculation, but that should not by any means be the only thing that you're looking at. There's way too many factors involved in that. And so, I think a lot of agents talk about price per square foot like it's the rule, the golden rule, and it's just not. So it's something to be aware of and to be mindful of, and clients talk about it. So we certainly want to know about it and use it, but I just think we need to be careful, right? So the other thing I didn't put in here was square footage. Obviously appraisers, they would like to stay within a, plus minus 300 range, if at all possible. I mean, a lot of homes that we have, that's just not possible, but that's where you want to focus on. So I didn't put it in here because using that Cloud Live CMA, like I showed you on this chart, I actually think it's a little bit helpful to kind of see a bigger range. That doesn't mean I'll leave it on here. I might take it off because it's not really the best comp. It's just giving me a bigger picture for the area. Does that make sense? The best comps are really going to be the ones closest, apples to apples, most similar to our subject property. And that's going to be within a range of, square footage. Sometimes it's year, but it's not always year because we talked about that effective year. It's lot size. It's, but again, that's more on like you might have some deeper lots, or maybe you have acreage. Maybe you have a huge corner lot versus some of these little tiny ones. Maybe your subject property backs up to a major road. You have to make sure that that's going to be a negative on the appraiser's report. Have y'all seen an appraisal? Have y'all seen a copy of an appraisal of a property yet? If you haven't, I would recommend you get with your mentor, or Zareen or Angela. Any of your sales managers can help you with that as well. It's very helpful, I feel like, when you're pricing a property, because you see how the appraisers are plus and minusing, and they will minus for condition based on where your property is located. So, and if you have a comp that backs up to one of those busy roads, that's probably why it's a little bit lower or selling maybe below that trend line, right? So those are just all factors you have to think about. Any other thoughts or questions, Zareen, Angela, any other thoughts you guys have as well?
No, great job.
Do you guys have any questions? Thank you so much, Jennifer.
As far as when you do have one that's not as easy to comp, how do you have that conversation with on the seller side? Hey, we should probably get an appraisal because the comps just aren't there. Or if they're wanting a way higher price than what you're seeing,
Yes.
how do you go about encouraging your seller to get an appraisal, and how do you go about paying for it? Like, do I offer to pay for it? Do I offer to pay for half?
That's a great question. I think every agent may handle it slightly different. I have done very few appraisals prior to them being priced, but it's sometimes because they're just so hard to comp, and I feel like it's worth it to do it. I will tell you though that I've had appraisers come in and price it way higher, and I've had appraisers come in and price it way lower. So you do, that is where I would say it's worth getting. The conversation that I've had with clients is to say, because your property is so unique, let's bring in and kind of break out of that, because we're going to have that appraisal conversation and question later with the buyer. And if we're questioning it, the buyers are questioning it. So we can actually go ahead and pay for an appraisal up front. That's something that you can do. And it's up to you, honestly, Elena, if you said, I want to split this with them, and that's just some of the service I'll provide. I probably wouldn't pay for it all up front. Or you could say you can reimburse me at closing, but what if you don't go to closing? You take the risk on. But I think there's a way to word it to where your sellers say, you know what, that's worth doing, because we want to go ahead and prove the value to to the buyers, to help them see the value. So the conversation to me, and the reason to get one, is because if you have questions that you don't think the buyers are going to see the value, and we want to help prove the value. Now, if you get an appraisal and you're showing it, to buyers, that's the conversation. But if that appraisal comes in really low, then you may not want to show it. So,
Right.
so you just have to think through that.
That's the challenge. And I think it's it's a pretty rare occasion when you would get a property appraised before you price it. And one of the things that you have the benefit of being at Briggs Freeman is that you can always take a listing as a hip pocket, soft price it, or say to figure out what you and the seller think their range is, and then hold it open on the brokers and say, can you guys help me out? And you don't have to even do it that formally, but make a group that you trust that will walk through and help give you their opinions. And then that gives you some, backing with your sellers as well, to say, like, I've consulted the experts in my office as well, and we all really think this is the range.
Yeah, and you have to think about it that appraisers are just like us. I mean, they're just pricing a property. It's their opinion, right? And you can have 5 different appraisers and have 5 different values. You can have 5 different agents and have 5 different values.
Right.
But I will say there's so many unique properties around the area. But I will tell you, our agents are so helpful in collaborating and giving advice. So even if you reached out on Buzz, or you sent out an email to your office, or even just start with your mentor or sales manager and say, I'm really struggling on pricing this property. Or I've seen some that have gone out to say, hey, I'm trying to do it kind of within this block, or I have this house with this. Has anyone had any experience with pricing a property like that? I'd love to have a conversation with you. And I think that people have always had someone reaching out. I would definitely start there first before you just go pay an appraiser, because the problem is what happens if it comes in really low, you know, and then are you, you know, do you disclose, you know, you should technically disclose that, but you don't want to disclose that. So you have to be careful.
You do have, right? You have to disclose it if it's a personal, or if we ordered the appraisal, right? Or
Zareen, do they have to?
I mean, no, I don't think that you are required to disclose it if you look at what like Texas property disclosure rules are. But I think it takes away a lot of leverage and puffing you can do in the negotiation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're being completely disingenuous. If you're like, I have no doubt that this is going to meet appraisal, like the value is there, and you have an appraisal for $100,000 less than what you're listing it, it's just a really hard argument for you to make.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so
Good
much.
question. You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well, I would have loved to have done more demonstration, but it always goes so quickly in time. But I would encourage you, if you haven't taken the Cloud CMA class, learn how to use these tools. I would take that or watch that recording. And then if you haven't done the Winning the Listing class, I would definitely encourage you to jump in, or you can just watch the Thomas Wright recordings. Those are really helpful. So if you're preparing for a listing appointment, and then certainly don't hesitate to reach out to people. I mean, people are here to help you. Your managers, your mentors, and just people in the office. So thank y'all for coming, and let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Thank you.